Hello and welcome to Training Journal number 2. This past training cycle, I've really felt that not only when life gets busy do I need to adapt my training, but also if I want to train for the rest of my life and keep consistent and really make training a big part of my life, I need to make sure that it's ingrained in my life. And so this sweet spot is always a game that we're trying to play. There is no right or wrong way. There is no ultimatum or perfect training plan or perfect training regime or the ultimate method. For me, it's about each one of us just figuring things out in our own way. So the key headlines for this 6 weeks, just under 6 weeks of training were, first of all, I increased my weekly frequency from 3 times to 4 times per week. I was settling into Lisbon. I have a flat here now, so we're really finding routines and structure that helps to increase the weekly volume. I increased my climbing from practically nothing to twice per week now, which I'm really happy with. When I was living in the Azores, it was beautiful, but I had no easy access to good climbing, either indoor or outdoor. So I chose to leave that to one side and choose a different project, which was hiking and trail running. With this change of adding climbing twice per week, I've changed how I'm structuring each of my strength training sessions. Rather than having upper body, lower body split, what I've chosen to do is have 2 full body sessions alongside my 2 climbing sessions. The sessions will be biased towards the legs, but I'll go into more detail on that later on. The third key point for the last 5 or 6 weeks is I've been preparing for the movement practice intensive that I'm co-teaching with Neil here in Lisbon. That's been a lot of not only preparation and planning in my mind, but also physically testing things and planning the movement practices that I'm getting people to do. And therefore, I've needed to be really on top of that. It takes a lot of time and energy, so of course, I've kept my training volume low. There's an idea that I love, which is to value momentum over motivation. Motivation is something similar to an emotion. It comes and goes in very small and quick bouts. For me, I find that gaining momentum on something and really breaking inertia early and keeping something in a rhythmical kind of fashion in my life helps me to sustain and maintain ideas and processes for a longer period of time, whether my motivation is super high or super low. So when you're training 4 times per week, usually it's pretty simple. 4 is a nice round number. You can have 2 sessions focused on the upper body, for example, 2 focused on the lower body. And that's a very easy split, very common split in the world of strength and conditioning. However, because I'm also focused on climbing as a practice, 2 of those sessions I've taken away and are focused predominantly on climbing skill, my fingers, and a little bit of maintenance on the one-arm chin-up goal because it fits in that session better. That means in my other 2 spare sessions, I'm designing them more like a full body split, but 70% bias towards the lower body to make up for the upper body bias in the climbing, and then 30% just to maintain my pulling strength. And again, one of my main goals in this year or so of training is to regain the one-arm chin-up. I'm currently at about 91 kilos in body weight, so I'm at my heaviest I've been for a long time, probably ever. And so I have to really work on not only the skill of the one-arm chin-up, but also my raw power. Weighted pulling is therefore incredibly important for me to build. I've chosen to do that in my full body sessions rather than take away the time in my climbing sessions. One thing I'm really aware of is to ensure that my weekly overall loading is not too high or too biased towards any area of the body. If you want to make sure that you don't reach any burnout, any injury, and you can maintain a long-term process, you need to really balance these variables of where in the body is getting worked the most. So let's move to the session outlines. Very simply, we'll begin with the climbing sessions that are a bit more simple. Of course, I have climbing as the main focus of that session, but I've also added a small module to keep practicing my one-arm chin-up. What I'm doing very simply is I have a warm-up, I work on my upper body, I move my spine, I move my scapula, and I just generally get warm in any way I wish to. I move in different planes of motion, and depending on how fresh I feel, depends on how much of a preparation I will do. I will do some one-arm hanging work, some finger warm-up and some strengthening for my forearms to prepare for the climbing. And then I will move into the one-arm chin-up skill work. So over the last few months, I've been working on the archer chin-ups and I hit the level that I wished. And now I'm going to move the progression on. The next progression I'm going to use is a mixed grip chin-up. But the main focus of the mixed grip chin-up is to reduce as much of the assistance as possible. Whereas in the archer, I was using a full arm to drive down on the assisting ring. For the mixed grip chin, I want to make sure that I'm using, a single finger, 2 fingers maximum, just to give myself maybe 10-15% assistance. Bit of a limitation on perception here, but I will do my best to make sure that I'm staying consistent and really putting an emphasis on the working arm. This will be low volume, quite high intensity. I won't do too much of it. I will just work for maybe half an hour here in this module and then move boom directly into my climbing. For this phase, I'm choosing to not plan any particular training for my climbing except enjoyment. I want to just go in the climbing gym, see what moves and what holds, what spaces look nice to me, and just explore and regain the feeling of being on the wall and the enjoyment of being on the wall. Sometimes we can train ourselves away from this feeling, these emotions, and it's really important to sustain long-term practice. You've got to enjoy it. And if you're only punishing yourself, you're only doing hard stuff, sometimes you miss the fun and the easy things and the lighter things. It's always a balance, pushing too much, not pushing enough. The sweet spot is the key. So, on to the full body sessions. As I was saying, they're split 70-30, lower, upper. I will begin again with an overall warm-up, an assessment of my body, checking in to see how I feel, maybe some hip preparation work depending on how my hips are feeling. I will then go directly into my hip dominant strength. For me, this will be the deadlift. This is my main focus for the beginning of the session, and I will begin to start working up the load. I've written here ramp up, which means I will take anywhere from 3 to 5 or even 6 sets to ramp up the loading until I hit my level of perceived exertion that I want for my 5 repetitions. What I'm trying to do is, rather than focus on weight and judging myself based upon the weight that I'm moving, I want to go to a space of exertion and being aware of myself. What we must understand is there's undulations of energy output, of recoverability, of fatigue. And when I'm training for myself, I need to be having this in mind. I don't want to only be robotic in my mindset and just push numbers week on week. Because I'm a human, I'm not a robot. I understand that I have undulations and I must balance things out. So I'm really focusing on ramping up towards my perceived exertion point, and then I do 3 sets at this level with 5 reps. This could be anywhere from, 100 kilos to 150 kilos, depending on the day and what's going on. Earlier in the phase, I was working very low. I was working maybe 1.2 to 1.3 times body weight, and then slowly moving that up more towards 1.5 of body weight. I then move on to my B section. So the B section is the secondary focus, and it will be my upper body. Again, I'm trying to keep increasing the weights for the weighted chins. I'm doing nothing crazy here. 3 by 3 to 5 reps, trying to increase that loading from 30 kilos upwards. And then I'm supersetting that with any type of pushing that I want. The most accessible thing in the space that I'm in, if I'm outdoors compared to indoors, doesn't matter. Just something that I feel like I'm maintaining some sense of strength and resilience in that area. I then move to the biggest change for my lower body section, which is some knee dominant work. So I've taken a small pause on the front split work. The reason being is I sustained a small, I won't call it an injury, but I've got some knee pain after the intensive. We had some foam matting that was quite grippy, and I did a quick rotation and felt just some small pain from an old knee injury. So I'm spending this phase just getting back on my knees with some knee focused work, namely anterior and posterior work. Anterior, some kind of cyclist squat, heel elevated squat. Nice and slow, getting some blood flow, getting some loading to these tissues. Tell my body that I'm feeling good, tell my system that I'm feeling good before I can move on. And then posterior, ring curl, some kind of work where I'm really squeezing the shortening side of that joint. Upper calves, lower hamstrings, just to really focus on their space. A couple of sets there, nice bit of volume, made myself feel good to finish the session, and everyone's happy. And then we had, of course, the preparations for the in-person workshops for this first 6 months of the year. This is obviously something that needs a bit of space and time. It's not a training task, but it's maybe more of a training stimulus because my body's physically active a lot. It's involving a lot of writing and reflecting on what ideas I want to share, the story or the journey I want participants to go on, and then of course testing that out on myself. I won't call it part of my training, but it is of course part of my need to recover, let's say. It's a really enjoyable process, and I'm looking forward to sharing with more people in real life this year. It's something that I've never done too much of. I'm not someone that likes to fly around all the time and share with different people. I feel it's quite stressful for me, but I think it's a really valuable part of what I do for work, so I want to do that more this year. We have 2 events coming up. We have the first one in Warsaw in Poland with one of my long-term online students, Kuba. Wonderful guy. He has the Warsaw movement practice. I'll be heading there to share in an open workshop exploring the concept of physical intelligence. This is on the weekend of April 12th to 13th. We also have the annual Climb and Move retreat, which is maybe my favorite week of the year. Of course, it's my passion, climbing, to get a group of people together, share with them some movement concepts, and then bring them to this beautiful process of involving not only the physicality, but also the emotional exploration, let's say, on the climbing wall is amazing. It's in the north of Spain with one of my best friends, the guy who taught me to climb. So please, if you're interested in climbing and pushing not only your physicality, but more importantly, your relationship to fear, this is a place for you. It's a lovely space. The house is in the middle of the mountains. It's stunning. I'll put the links in the description down below. As always, guys, please comment down below if you have any questions, if you want some progressions, regressions, some ideas for your own training. Please feel free to get involved in the conversation. Otherwise, keep figuring things out.